Hi guys, it's Clockwork Noodles here. We are back with another episode to dissect, but make sure you guys are subscribed. There will be a schedule going up very shortly just to clear up when things are supposed to go out. There will also be very shortly, in about 2 weeks' time, there is going to be my midway review. In this review, I am going to tell you guys what my top 3 OP and EDs are. I'm also going to tell you guys what my top 3 standing anime of the season so far is as well. The fun thing about the partway review is because it's going to change. You know, I do my big wrap up at the end of each season. It's always fun to see how things have changed. It's also been quite the interesting season, so it'll be fun to see if a lot changes, because I don't think too much will in this circumstance. Last things last, there is a Discord channel too for you guys to join if you want a notification whenever videos go up on the channel too. Perfect place for you guys to lurk, and it also allows you to know when I'm taking breaks or if there's any delays on the channel. To Your Eternity, episode 15. Last time we were all shocked to see suddenly Perona was on screen, and we were like, well, she hasn't died. Well, bluntly, the narrator is going to tell us kind of how it is. So he tells us that yes, Perona is dead. We don't know anything about how she died, when it happened. We just know that Perona is dead. I have a few theories that Hayase, I think her name's Hayase, the bitch I really do not like, might have had something to do with it, but we hopefully might find out at some point. Narrator, being quite cold about Perona being dead, ends up getting a very cold dismissal from Fushi, in which he respects and vanishes. But he does, before leaving, tell us that you shouldn't be getting upset every time something dies. This is going to be one of those key factors for this week's episode, the idea of death, how different people view it, because Tonari's got quite a different opinion as well compared to Fushi. So it's going to be one of those episodes where the point of this week's episode is to understand death, what it means, and we're also going to be finding out what Tonari's main role is as a character, because she isn't a character I like very much, and yes, even though she has done quite a bit this week as well, she's still not my favourite character, but I have figured out what her role in the story is. I also considered the reason why narrator might have had a bit more of a colder approach to the idea of death, and it's mainly because of the idea that he is immortal. So to him being immortal, well, immortal with the asterisks by them, because it looks like his time is going to run out. He's just got a long life. He lives longer than most. Him seeing death all around him is a day-to-day occurrence, so at some point he has to shut himself off. It's not the same, a death is just a death to him. So that is perhaps why he holds slightly different opinions from Fushi, who is new to this world and he's attaching himself to these people. Also, the narrator doesn't really have any attachments to the world. Also, perhaps why he's not really getting emotional. Perona's form is a fantastic form. I'm also quite happy that we do get to hear the voice actor for Perona come back. It's a little bit bittersweet though, because I wish she was alive and we knew what happened. But perhaps at some point we might learn that. But Perona and the March face, the March pouting face, there's something so wrong about seeing them paired together, but also something so right about seeing them paired together at the same time. It is definitely the episode where we debate the nature of death and what it means to die, because we have seen so far that the narrator doesn't really get emotional at death, and now we are learning from Tonari that Tonari believes that some people really do deserve death. And this is going to be one of those interesting topics that you can definitely go and debate with people. It is indeed a very difficult topic to think about, but definitely makes for an interesting debate nonetheless, where we are told that Fushi ended up sparing a murderer of 50. So to Tonari, who believes that some people definitely deserve death, she definitely meaning people who are like murderers. This guy has murdered 50 people. We don't know how, and if it was down to him murdering people in the arena. If that wasn't the case, he's taken 50 lives who weren't willingly wanting to go. He's taken innocent lives. So perhaps that is what we mean. And at that point, Tonari's belief doesn't seem as cold as it initially would be. Tonari, however, does try too hard to try getting me on board, and the same with Fushi. I think Fushi really does share my sentiment when it comes to her. She tries a bit too hard. She tries, again, lying, cheating, and keeping things from him. Trying to, as well, state that I own you. I don't like that as well. She also tries to control Fushi, which just isn't a good way of going about things. All of the things that you really probably shouldn't be doing if you really actually want Fushi to like you. She's also the reason why Perona herself is still a captive, and the reason why poor Fushi is on the island, bearing in mind that Fushi shouldn't be on the island. I think perhaps the one which gets me the most is the fact that she's pushing poor Fushi to fight a fight that isn't really his fight, and Fushi just doesn't want to take part in it, and she's not really respecting that opinion. Tori does try a new tactic with Fushi by telling him about her dad. This essentially is trying to bring out a similarity by saying, well, you love Piran because she's your family, but my dad also is a murderer and I want to believe him, but now he's dead. This little story is to try and help Fushi relate, help Fushi sympathise, however, it doesn't quite work out. The last tactic she does try is, I'll help you find Piran, perhaps the one you probably should have started with in the first place. You are the reason why that these guys are now in that mess. However, she does say that the person who is responsible for wanting Piran on the island is somewhere on the island, so she tries to investigate and find out who they are and where they are. However, that doesn't seem to really be the case a bit later on. The midway section, we get to see a little bit more busier now because we have the addition of Perona next to March. Fushi, if we want to think about his admiration for Perona is held in quite high regards with both Piran and Fushi, which we get to see a bit later on too, because Fushi finally makes it past the wall, and we finally get to talk to Piran, who is locked away. So Piran even believes that Perona died honourably, protecting somebody. It definitely feels that way, but again, this is to your eternity. It's a possibility she just got murdered in cold blood by Hayase. Piran has accepted her fate. She believes that, again, this is my life. I am a criminal. I am destined to be behind bars, so she's pretty much resolved this is her fate, this is what's probably going to happen. But she does try to tell Fushi to save yourself. The door is locked, I can't get out, so even if you come and climb up here, I can't physically get out. She tries to implore Fushi to live according to Perona's wishes, the idea of not wasting a life or trying to be there to do something good, using your life to achieve a good thing. Todori's still not warming up to me, ends up with some information, but decides that she's going to uphold the truth, not tell Fushi anything, until he, again, once more, goes back into another fight. And it's not his fight, it's a fight against his will. I just can't really get behind it. It's a very clever use of the mole this time in the fight, because our opponent is very strong. It's somebody who wasn't actually going to let any blows go through, who seemed pretty evenly matched. So the use of the mole to get behind him and finally get a sneak attack in, I think is very, very clever. It's a very clever way of also ending this next bout in the arena. Sadly, the man ends up wounded because of the people around him. So even despite Fushi trying his best not to kill anyone, the audience ends up more rowdy and then ends up taking him out regardless. So Fushi ends up moving on to the last round, and of course the last round is going to be against Hayase. I figured that was the fact, and I think there's a reason for that, and I can kind of call what's going to happen there. Fushi's depression and guilt ending up building a bit further as he sees the man wounded, but thankfully the two do get to talk, and I think this talk is what's most important this episode. Is the whole idea of why you're in a tournament in the first place, because Fushi's trying to protect somebody, and so is the opponent. It's the fact that they are both fighting to save somebody they care about, which is the whole importance of Fushi getting to talk to him, because I think it at least eases some of that pain that Fushi is carrying, because they are both the same. And this also allows him to consider, what does it mean to die an honourable death? What does the word honourable actually mean? And having this opponent here is that reason, is to show Fushi what it means to be honourable, because there are some things worth dying for, like dying to protect a loved one. Tonari, again, really not winning any brownie points in my books, decides to get in the way of a well-earned conversation. This conversation was well-earned, and I'm sad that it ended up being interrupted, because Fushi seemed to be at least resolving things in his head in this talk. It seemed like a talk that he really deserved to get into. And again, lying once more by not really telling him any useful information. She does, however, try to redeem herself when she stands up and takes responsibility when things start to get a bit hairy, because the islanders are very upset because Fushi is essentially trampling all over them. He is immortal, he can't die. However, they can. So they feel like he is robbing people of their choice and their decisions. The knockers finally return, aka the fake boobs. The bear definitely looked a bit bigger this week, and Gugu ends up being lost, so does the mole. And the narrator quickly chucking Fushi some advice and vanishing is quite nice to see, where the fight begins. The entire point of this fight, and this is the fight that brings out the reason behind Tonari as an MC, the fight is there to show us that Fushi can't do some things alone. There are some points where he needs to allow other people to help him. And this is also something that we saw with Gugu. Gugu made the choice to stand up for his brother, despite knowing that it would probably cost him his life, because this is what he wanted to do. That was his right. The fight ends up beginning and we end up seeing yet more forms being taken, and that's when Toneri and her gang end up getting involved. Fushi, trying his hardest to push her away, ends up perhaps almost getting her killed because she ends up falling down. But this is the point. Toneri doesn't get the memo. She doesn't want to leave him behind because this is her purpose in our story now. Her purpose in the story is to show Fushi alone is not better. There are points when you need to trust other people. The villagers, Toneri's gangs, everybody tries to attempt to take on the fake boobs. They end up aiming between the rocks, where we get to see Perona's strength. Perona's strength was her archery skills. This is something that we can finally use. Fushi's now got a form where archery is his skill. Perhaps the idea of being able to hone in on a certain point is hopefully going to help him at some point. Where we've got some new weapons. We've acquired gunpowder arrows, which is definitely going to help. And we end up seeing the Knockers finally defeated. March and Gugu's forms are returned. No doubt the fake boobs will be coming back at some point down the line. They're definitely not going to be wiped out by this. But it is a good episode nonetheless. The main points being in this episode, Fushi has to learn that at some point you need to let other people in. You need to trust other people because you can't do some things on your own. He needed the villagers to restrain the bear whilst he had a good shot at the crack in the bear's chest. Toneri, her point in this story is to show you can't win things alone. She is a flawed MC, but that is the point of Toneri's character. At some point, I think next week, we're probably going to get a bit more behind her. We're going to learn a bit more about her. So thankfully, she might end up in our good books next week. But it was indeed another painful episode. I don't think this is my favourite arc, but nonetheless, it is To Your Eternity. There are going to be points of this story where they do get hard or they do get frustrating at times. I know a few of you were sharing my sentiment that it was a bit of a irritating last week episode. It was difficult, awkward, annoying at points, and I'm still carrying it across, but it is there for a reason. It's there to learn and teach Fushi these lessons that need to be learnt. So another really good episode. I am happy that we are breaking this down together, so thank you guys so much for your continued support. We have 5 episodes left. The ending is now slowly upon us. This one's gonna end a part way through the season. I think it's gonna, unless they separate and give us gaps between the episodes, I think it's going to end partway through the season. There might end up being a bit of a gap on the channel, but I'm sure I'll find something to fill that gap with. So have a good day, guys, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.